Hi, and welcome back to What's the Damage, companion show to the incredibly well-known and popular real play D&D show, Roll for Damage. No tagline this week. I'm tired. Make up your own. So on Friday, the Shields of Twilight closed out their time in this weird, long, cult maze dungeon thing with one final battle, which they fought along one very unexpected ally. It's Butcher. I'm talking about Butcher, the great boogeyman from the late Dobby's backstory, who seems fine. No, he actually kind of seems fine. But Butcher popping up like a bad chaotic neutral, maybe. Penny wasn't the only surprise and wasn't the only blast from the past that we had this session, as also Baltaim's sister showed up, who is apparently running around and involved in all of this, and we'll probably find out what all this means next episode, but for right now she's here and she seems cool. Yeah, so whatever all this ends up being, our hero's journey seems to be drawing to a close, at least in this part of the world. But I do think this is probably time for one more twist before we put a little bow on this. And we can only speculate what that twist might be, and we can only speculate live on stream right now. On this show specifically. It's the only place we can speculate. That's why you need to tune in every week. Anyway, as always, stick around after the stream for links, charities, resources, cool stuff. I'm your host, Truth Venson, and this is What's the Damage? Hi, welcome back. I've got two wonderful guests with me today. We have got the absolutely scintillating Caleel, who plays Baltaim, who had a big episode. And then we've got the effervescent Chad, who plays...
I was hoping I was going to get a good adjective. Yeah,
I had to like scramble for one. I was like, oh god, what's another like big adjective?
I know I'm hard to describe. The Sasquatch-like Chad.
Yeah.
Sasquatch-like, Bigfoot-esque.
Mm-hmm.
Sasquatch-esque?
Bigfootish.
Bigfootish. Okay.
Footish.
I wanted to make it sound fancy and like French.
Please go right ahead.
Anyway, guys, some interesting and cool stuff happened. There was a bit of a family reunion for Baltaim, and there would have been one for Dobby too if he weren't dead. So what's the damage?
Too soon.
I yield my time to Caleel because he has more questions to answer right now as far as how his character is feeling. So
I don't recall anything happening Friday, guys.
Truth, sick him.
Yeah, very quiet episode.
Very quiet, low key episode.
Yeah, we're really kind of having to struggle for stuff to talk about this week.
Here right now.
Baltaim just sat on a porch drinking sweet tea out of a mason jar, like, lovely evening tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was kind of the whole episode, just a very sedate tea party in that
Yeah.
dungeon with some skeletons.
Yeah.
If
Skeletons
you like
can't really
sedate tea
drink,
party
but
action, watch us on Fridays.
watch us on Fridays. It's like no other D&D you've seen before.
This is accurate.
Yeah, roll to add the correct amount of sugar. It's harder
Right.
than you think.
Yep.
Natural
It
one.
is.
Oh, you basically made a slurry.
Disgusting.
You
You take psychic damage.
do.
Anyway, so a lot of stuff to dig into this episode. But before we get our little shovels and start scooping that shit, I do have one question about what happened in a previous episode because I was unable to get Chad on. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about Quinn's blowout with Lex because I thought that was an interesting scene. We sort of got Serenity's perspective on that last episode or the episode before last, but I just wanted you to talk about it. It seemed like it was building for a bit.
A little bit, yeah, because with a lot of what Quinn has seen, it's like, and this is just, a perspective thing for him, because a lot of times whenever he or the group end up talking to them, it happens right after something has gone completely to shit and they already feel stupid enough. And then you have these people showing up. You're like, wow, you're all morons. And sort of pouring lemon juice on the wound a little bit. Just pointing out like, yes, we know we failed. We don't need you to remind us. Oh, you're reminding us anyway. That's great. And then whenever the fight was kind of fucked up, but we tried and no one actually died or even came as close as we have come before to actually dying. So, we did okay. Progress was made. But then to be told that we were basically like the albatross around the neck that was going to get this person killed was just sort of like, no, I don't want any more of this. So he just was like, fuck this and fuck you. And then just stormed on back because he had enough just overall of being reminded the various ways in which they suck, because he already knows the various ways in which they suck. He's already there every day. He knows their shortcomings. He's part of their shortcomings.
Interesting. Good pull with the albatross too, by the way. Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner for anyone who's wondering.
I got a BA in English. I use it for literally nothing.
English major buddies.
Yeah.
Anyway, so if Quinn's been feeling this way for a while then?
It's just sort of like like you said, it's been building because it seems like every time they run into one of them and they've done something wrong, the first thing that happens is they remind them how they've done something wrong, or just that's the way a lot of it comes off. And again, it's a perspective thing because in character, like that's what he's thinking. As a player, I understand they have done quite a bit to help. I understand that they're reacting to the fact that we have done a lot of stupid shit, not in the worst way, but it's essentially the best thing I can equate it to on a personal perspective is talking to my own mother, because I will do a thing, a stupid thing ages ago. She will catalog this. She has a catalog of every dumb thing I've ever done. And then I will mention, hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing. And then all of a sudden, a litany of my failures begins to pour forth from this woman. Like, oh, thank you for reminding me of the stuff that I already fucking knew that I did. That's really helpful of you. And so it's just sort of like that same sort of thing with like, it's the best way I can explain it is just, he just has that sort of interaction with them. It's like, he knows that they failed. He knows that they sucked at the occasional thing and doesn't need someone else to tell him so.
I think it's becoming a bit of a knee-jerk reaction too, because kind of like, as you mentioned, like you can get into patterns with people. You can get very easily into negative communication patterns.
Yes.
As it were.
Yes, that's very true.
Interesting. Yeah, and Quinn's quite an emotional character too, so it makes sense, kind of. It makes sense for his character that he would have had this thing building and blown up eventually. Although I did find it interesting that only a couple episodes after you had all been very down on Campion for being rude to Lex, Quinn was extremely rude to Lex.
Yes, this is true.
Mhm.
But in my defense, when Quinn was extremely rude to Lex, it was in the middle of a heated situation and he just completely blew out right there in the moment. When Campion was rude to Lex, it was because Campion is a weird sociopath.
I don't think Campion was actually even that rude. He was just weird at Lex.
Yeah. And it's the kind of weirdness that can be taken as rude. It's like someone who either does not understand basic social interaction or cannot understand basic social interaction. And if you do not know that about this person, their behavior comes off as incredibly rude because you don't understand there's something else there that's preventing them from catching on to the minutia of how to socialize. And that's basically what Campion is the person who is very, very terrible at talking to people, being really weird in Lex's direction, and having his weird conspiracy theories just sort of, kick up dust at her. And then she's like, "What's your problem?" He's like, "I don't trust anything or anyone because science," and none of it made any sense.
I think he's funny.
I'm not saying he isn't. I'm just saying like that's the closest I can get to summing it up.
Jay is the best character.
Jay is a D&D character.
Yeah,
I feel like he doesn't really exist. He's just some sort of weird amalgamation of D&D characters that has somehow crossed the uncanny valley and gained full sentience and agency.
Okay, what is a personality if not an amalgamation of all your D&D characters?
I mean, you know what? If you boil them all of them down, that is basically what happens. Yeah.
Mary Sue's. Anyway, no, literally. Anyway, so
wrong.
To move on to some stuff that happened this episode, you did kind of come to the end of this nice little dungeon crawl you've been having. Are you guys relieved to make it all the way through?
Yes, very much.
Yeah. I mean, like a good dungeon crawl. I don't feel like it didn't. This one didn't like drag on, so that's good.
Yeah, I agree. It was a good solid length, like not too long, not too short. It just long enough that we're able to get into some shit and question whether or not we're going to survive, and then go into the big boss fight and squeak one out.
If you're going to survive, yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like this is the good link for the archetypal dungeon crawl. It's got just enough to not feel like you're being buried alive in problems.
Yeah, I thought it went along at like a pretty good clip.
It did, yeah. Yeah, the pacing was solid.
Caleel, no!
He's frozen, or he's just like chilling really hard.
He's frozen. Caleel. Oh, he's gone.
That's fine. Yeah. I suppose I have to talk a lot now until he gets back.
Yeah, your spotlight.
It's not like I can possibly talk constantly for the next several minutes. My God.
Chad, do you want to share your opinions on every topic? Okay. Hi, Serenity's here. She's always here.
Special guest.
Awesome. So I guess I'll just ask while you're here until we hopefully get Caleel back soon. So there was this very good cliffhanger right before the boss fight where you guys had all like barged into the room with these principal conspirators and you were hearing their conversation. They're all looking at you like, what are you doing here? That's weird. What did you think was going to happen like at the end of the episode before last?
I had no idea. I knew it would not be great, like as far as the amount of danger being directed at us. But I have learned to stop trying to guess at what might happen because I'd rather use the mental real estate on calculating ways I can try and survive a scenario, as opposed to, ooh, I wonder what this is going to be. Doesn't matter. Whatever you think it is, it won't be. You will be incorrect.
It will be something else.
It will be not the thing you thought, and then you'll be stupid for thinking that thing you thought.
No, I mean, it could be anything. There are no
Yes.
stupid ideas. No stupid ideas in D&D. It's all fine. Yeah. I thought you guys were gonna like maybe talk a little bit. I thought maybe Oriana would try to interrogate them because she likes doing that sometimes. But you had a cool little fight instead. And let's talk about that that last monster fight, kind of like the boss fight of this dungeon, which found you fighting alongside one unexpected ally, at least.
Yeah, that was amazing. That is something I did not expect to have happen in any possible timeline. Have the guy that we have been, because Butcher's been painted as this like Kaiser Soze boogeyman for the entirety of the campaign, and in retrospect, it's because of the way Jay played Dobby as a mildly insane person with a criminal background. And then all of a sudden we meet this guy, and then all we had to do is name drop Dobby, and he's like, oh, you're friends of his. Here, allow me to help you kill these things and make sure you don't die. And then we get talking like, yeah, Dobby was my son. The hell? Like, just the hits kept on coming and coming and coming.
Well, sometimes you have complicated relationships with your parents.
I mean,
again, it's all a matter of perspective, right? Like that was Dobby's perspective was not wrong. Like he experienced all those things validly, and he wasn't given the information by Butcher at the time for whatever reasons Butcher had, which obviously wasn't delved into because this group isn't Dobby and didn't really dig deep with him. But I don't think like Dobby was wrong in his perspective, nor was like the information that he gave to the group wrong. That was what he believed. That was what he experienced. He was almost killed by this man and spent many, many years trying to find him and exact his revenge on him. So,
Yeah. And having that be the only part that we heard, and then for him to just all of a sudden be there putting on a fucking Liam Neeson in Taken Clinic was amazing.
Dude love his kids.
Yeah.
Of which he apparently has a lot.
Yeah, at least two that we know of, and we have no idea how many more people he has.
We find out Butcher has like 20 kids and he's like parenting all of them. Just a stable back home full of children.
There's an orphanage somewhere, and or actually no, he just has a really big foster home, like he's foster parent to a ton of kids. And
you know what? I'm pretty sure this is a real thing. It might be a thing that I just read on the internet, but I read somewhere that the Yakuza used to run foster homes or orphanages as money laundering, but it was also an orphanage. So
I mean, it makes sense. I've heard of things with hiding crime with children because you don't look where the kids are.
I wonder if the Mafia did something similar as well. Like I wouldn't put it past. I wouldn't put it past them if they did. But like, it's a perfect front, right?
Yeah.
Perfect front. Yeah, who's gonna question these cute little kids?
Yeah.
Like, do you hate children? Why are you questioning us?
I know.
Again,
right?
They're also perfect like mules to do odd jobs for you that aren't going to be caught. Give them a few coins and they'll do whatever.
You can raise the next little generation of criminals.
There you go.
There you go. Adopt kids. They need homes. Anyways.
And can be used for crimes.
We do not endorse that.
We just did is the problem.
Maybe. Okay.
If you use children for crimes, we here at Roll for Damage are not to be held liable for any crimes committed by said children in perpetuity. Yes, it's clearly satire. Don't listen to us. We don't know what we're doing.
We are just people saying shit on the internet. Anyway, Serenity, do you want to talk a little bit about this like big fight with these interesting NPCs since Kaleel's not back yet?
Yeah, I guess I can. I mean, like the main fight was always meant to be the like Zelfax was their main sort of quarry. He tied up. I mean, there were these intertwined threads with like Baltaim's backstory and stuff like that, but their main purpose for doing this entire investigation and finding things was like, okay, Zelfax leads us, to the end where we can potentially get the evidence we need. So I always knew that was the case. But then obviously I had this, this backstory tie-in and this like final moment where I always knew Shaitis was going to be there. They were going to find her. Butcher was always going to be there. That has been from the beginning. I knew like Ephraim was going to be tied in. They still don't know quite exactly what he's doing, but I was like, I definitely want to make sure there's enough distance between these guys so that someone doesn't try to like thunderstep or dimension door to him close enough that they're going to get into a fight with him, because I was like, that'll be real bad. And I know a lot of people like want to kind of like do that stuff, which is why I kind of adjudicated he was already walking away at the end. And there was the opportunity for someone to still make that decision. Like I said, I don't like to railroad, but it was kind of like he was walking away and they had their own focus on this other stuff. And so I always knew that Lex and Ephraim were going to do their thing in the back, which I was rolling for, and she was taking damage. And so was he. But yeah, that was their main quarry. And then I always knew Butcher, he had his relationship with Shy over the months that they've been together. But he was going after his daughter. And so his purpose was, well, I'm not going to let her die. I've been protecting her this entire time. But had they have not used that conversation to try and get his attention, he would have just like dumped her off somewhere where he thought she would be safe, and then he would have booked it past all of them and continued going on towards Ephraim and Lex to see if he could catch up with them, which as a monk he's fairly fast. So so that was the original. But when he got this information and realized the kind of state that they were in and that they knew Dobby, he made the decision to stick around and actually help them out and see what he could do for them. So that was an actual interesting twist, and it's what I love about D&D. You have a moment where a character can choose a multitude of directions, both on the player character side, but also on how they interact with NPCs, and this ended up working very much in their favor.
Yeah, it also, I will say one other thing, just from encounter design standpoint, you made sure that there were enough things between us and the big bad wizard in the very, very, very far back of the room to make it so we did not feel like getting back there would do any good, because there were so many things already interposed. They're like, oh, we clearly need to deal with the giant bone monsters and that wizard who keeps sniping us, the son of a bitch. And like there was so much going on up there that going back after him, it's like, I don't think that ever would even come up as a thought. Like, but what about no?
Well, that was the other thing. As originally I had thought I would have you see Shy. And I was like, no, if I do that, someone's going to try and beeline to her right away, already knowing who she is, especially Ball with his like impulsiveness. And I was like, I never want to put a character, because as a player, I mean, as the character who loves his sister, has been going after his sister, he would naturally want to do that right away. And I never want to put a character in a position where it's like, well, what else? What am I going to do? Like, I see her leaned over and potentially hurt or unconscious, and I'm just gonna sit here and be like, well, wait a moment, I gotta kill these bone monsters. Meanwhile, like 2 skeletons are standing over her. So I wanted to make sure that she was covered and they couldn't see her until a moment where it actually made sense for her to join. And that was the other thing. I was also counting rounds until when she would wake up, because I always knew that she would wake up at a point, but it wasn't until that last moment when she finally got up herself and came to also join the fray. But yeah, I never want to put a character in a position where I'm like, that's a really bad position for them to be in, and I don't see them making any other choice than like getting right up in the wizard's face to like save his sister, you know. So
yeah, encounter design. It's always a bunch of moving parts in the background.
So many.
Oh, Caleel. We'll have to make him come on next week or something.
Yeah, you definitely.
Yeah, because apparently
he just said his whole block lost power. So
oh no.
Yeah, so I don't know if he's coming back.
I don't think so.
We're probably not tonight. Pray for Caleel.
It's okay. There's still lots more to come with his sister next session, so I'm sure he'll have a whole swath more questions.
So we'll
to
have
ask
more.
him.
Oh yeah, it'll time out well.
Okay, cool beans. Oh, can I ask, Serenity then? So you had mentioned that for a long time you had like this this part of the campaign to be the intersection of Dobby and Baltaim's plots. So with Dobby gone, were you able to like repurpose some of the plot and like still show the characters some of the cool things you had planned for this?
I didn't have to.
Oh, you didn't have to?
I didn't have to. I always knew how they intersected. And like I said, the world moves in various ways. And there are certain things that they'll maybe never know because they don't have Dobby there to ask the questions or to press the issues or to have the theories or whatever about things or to push to go after certain things. And so they're only going to get, a certain amount of what this was all about. And what they'll actually get out of this unless they somehow become like best friends with Butcher and like have tea with him and he tells them his entire life story. Yeah,
I mean that's on the table.
But this, I really didn't have to change anything because Butcher was already so entwined in this. The ways where it splits off is how Dobby would actually the thing that would have been interesting would be to see how Dobby would have reacted in that situation. Seeing the person that he's wanted to go after all this time. Would he have, as soon as he saw Butcher running across the field, intercepted him and outright stopped him and attacked him and focused on him? Like that was the area where I had kind of like left it open. But all of the getting to that part, there were certain things that they didn't do. Like there were certain things that I think like Dobby might have investigated more on the streets. Like he was more streetwise, so he might have like maybe found a cult member using his wiles in the streets and like shook them down for more information and maybe got them sooner. Maybe he would have avoided them being captured. Those kinds of things, just because he was a lot more like street smart and investigative in nature. But the actual like end state of them getting to that place, I knew was that was so intertwined in their story already, and Butcher was so ingrained in what was happening with the cult and the Strangled Vine because of his daughter. And so I was like, well, whether Dobby's dead or not, he doesn't have any information on that. He doesn't know. The last time he saw Dobby was in Zarithamar, or knew that Dobby was in Zarithamar, and assumed he was still alive somewhere.
Awesome. Okay, so only Chad. Do you think
only me?
Only you, lone Chad by himself. With us.
The Chad.
Womp womp.
Chad. Yeah, there's like a lone spotlight. It's just you on stage. You start singing. Oh, what's that song? Mr. Cellophane.
Yeah.
Damn good song. Good pull.
Good song. We're doing good polls tonight. Good polls only classic cultural stuff. I am stalling for time. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
Anyway, so do you guys think that you have found enough to like buy Oriana's freedom with what you found so far and discovered?
I feel like two-part answer. One, possibly yes, because we found evidence that a conspiracy was actually being hatched and that things were being planted as far as, false evidence against someone in a place where we would have no business knowing there was evidence being planted and no access to said place to involve ourselves. Therefore, the fact that we would have this information and can say, go in there and you will find incriminating stuff that is all false would be enough to sort of fulfill the contract. Also, we do have several eyewitness accounts, and potentially, if Perry wants to do this, actual memory of seeing these people there in this place that she can use to provide like video evidence of stuff that was going down, and the corpse of a dead conspirator. It makes a fairly strong case So I think it might be enough, at least to say, you hired us to do a job. Here it is. We did the job. And here is the evidence that we were able to accrue. 2, I feel like if it isn't, we're not getting a chance to get anything else because Oriana made that call on the way back without telling anybody. And I'm pretty sure we're walking into a big old meeting of, well, it's time to turn in your work.
I know you all get back to Oriana's place, like ready to go to sleep, and there's Kate and a bunch of guards. And he's like, well, let's debrief.
Everybody that's involved is going to just be standing there waiting for us, like, well, you called, here we are. Now give us all the information you have. And then Quinn's just going to be like, motherfuck.
Like,
not even 5 minutes to gather our thoughts or get some tea and biscuits or something. Just like, nope, back to it.
Oriana sends out like the Zoom invite to the meeting like 2 minutes before the meeting starts. And she's like, wait, this was supposed to be in your calendar.
Yeah, really.
Told you about last week. No, you didn't. Anyway, I'm getting used to office work again.
Yep.
Lovely. So that will bring us to our topic for the day. I had so many questions for all tiny units. Okay, next week. That will bring us to our topic for today. So it's getting up to Halloween season. So we're going to talk about zombies and ghosts and skeletons and ghouls and vampires and necromancy and the undead. So that's always a fun time. I'm a big fan of necromancy and dead bodies in general in D&D.
I'm glad you clarified that at the end there.
To clarify, just you know, we said some weird stuff in this episode.
Yes.
Yeah. Legally satire. It's fine.
Oh god. Necromancy and dead bodies.
Don't take us at our word.
Don't.
Yes, and had that been the end of the sentence, I'd be like, Truth, I have several follow-up questions.
Yeah.
Also, I don't want you to answer any of my follow-up questions.
Well, guess what? I'm not the one being questioned today. It is you.
Cool.
And Serenity. So first question is, do you think necromancy is like automatically dark magic?
No, because if you look at the definition for necromancy as far as like the school of magic, I mean, sure, creating a corpse army is in there, but so is like resurrection and revivify and literally any healing spell. Like there's no separate school for any of that. So like it can't be all evil because there is so much other stuff that's done with it.
Mm-hmm.
I will say healing spells used to be necromancy. They are now evocation. So they're no longer considered necromancy. Yep. Just raising someone from the dead is
that is true.
Necromancy. Yeah, I think they changed that because
I like that.
I think the reason they changed that was because like a lot of campaigns like played off of the like, you know, there's a stigma to necromancy and healing, though dealing with like the nature of like you gaining your constitution back or whatever. That's not necessarily like coming from a school of like of necromantic energy. Like I think that's where they were like coming from. It is like raising someone from the dead, resurrecting them, whether it be to use them for a nefarious purpose or to save a friend. That is always going to be necromantic. Like that requires that kind of energy to bring someone back. But to heal someone's wounds, that kind of seems a little bit strange, especially like, you know, if druids are using like nature-based healing and stuff like that, it's weird to put them in the school of necromancy. So I think that's the mindset around it.
That makes sense if it is.
But yeah, I also agree with Chad. Like there's a stigma of necromancy, and it really depends on the world that you're playing in and where your character comes from. But I think like anything, you can have an evil purpose for regular magic. You know, if you power word kill someone, like what's the difference between power word killing them and raising a couple of skeletons and having the skeletons kill them? Like you're still doing a bad thing. Or There's the same thing as
kill necromancy though.
It is not.
Is it? No, I thought it. I think it's like an invocation or something.
In preparation for this episode, I pulled up on D&D Beyond the actual list of necromancy spells and elected to read it thoroughly. But I just looked it over for power word kill.
You end up with a zombie.
No, that's finger of death.
Yes.
Power word kill. Power word kill is the one where it's like you just say one word and the person just drops dead.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, no. So that's all I'm saying is like I think like necromancy. If you have a necromancer who's raising the undead to help fight and save people, are they really that evil? I mean, they're reusing the bones. If bones are not doing anything, anyways.
Right. And also, speaking of someone who has played through all of the Diablo games at this point, and has played a necromancer in 2 and 3, that is a character who is there using the bodies of the dead to make sure a greater evil does not arise, and not doing it with any kind of malice or any intent on desecration or anything else. It's just, this is where I am going to use the bodies of those I have slain in defense of the world to slay others that are trying to do great harm. So, I mean, it's all how it's supposed to just all how you use it. It's like tools.
Yeah, there you go. Again, perspective, right? Everything's perspective.
Yeah, use the tools that are in front of you. Sometimes those tools are bones. Or flesh. Yeah. I'm kind of sad that they changed that though, because like thematically I liked the fact that like healing and necromancy were two sides of the same coin. Wouldn't it be interesting if like healing was taboo in a D&D campaign, like magical healing? Oh wait, has Chad frozen?
Yep. I hope his power didn't go out.
It's just gonna be me and you, Serenity.
Hey, he's back.
Yeah, my internet connection went all.
I mean, it would be interesting. I think if healing was, but I think that would be difficult because, like, if you think about just in general, like real life, right? I mean, when you go to the doctor and you get like antibiotics and stuff like that, like we don't consider that like a nefarious, like taboo.
I mean, some people super do.
Yeah, okay, I guess like the anti-medical like vax people, but what I'm saying is like the general populace, like if we want to extend life beyond like your first illness kills you and that's it, that's all you get, is like you better fucking not get a cold or like cut yourself on something and get even an inch of bacteria in it and get it infected, because otherwise, sorry, you're dying. I think that makes it hard. And that makes it, I mean, that makes the stakes worse than actual real life. If it was like, you're like, you have to hide you're healing someone in battle, because
I think that'd be really interesting.
It would be. I don't think I'd played in a D&D setting though. I think like D&D is too combat heavy and too required of like you to use resources and stuff like that. I think it would make more sense in like a World of Darkness type game or something like that.
Yeah. Maybe. Or actually, I know a thing that would work really well, because if you use something like Monster of the Week, one of the Powered by the Apocalypse games, you're just normal people for the most part who are hunting monsters and doing all sorts of crazy shit. But one of the things you can do is you can be someone that knows how to use magic, and like having a person in normal Earth that is suddenly able to heal and knit wounds back together, that person runs the risk of being stoned by crazed villagers in Daytona,
like by the government.
Or that too. Like that's the thing, like in that kind of a setting where you're just putting something that weird and fantastical that cannot happen into that setting, then it would make sense. But for something like D&D, like you're saying, because a lot of it does focus on combat and hit points and whatnot, the inability to heal without some sort of backlash would be intense. That's the only thing I can think to describe it.
I will defend my idea and say that you're not always fighting in the middle of a village. Oftentimes you can be a little bit sneaky about it. I think it would add a interesting mechanic to the game overall, having to like hide your magic.
I agree. As a DM, you'd probably have to run it like in specific situations to help the players out a little bit. And it would be like, it would be like a real difficult conundrum for like someone who's playing, say, like a cleric or something like that, where they're they believe
that
what they're doing is right. And yeah. I mean, you could always do that. You could always change the school as a DM. By the way, anyone who wants to do this, if that's the type of campaign you want to run, you can always change the school of magic for any spell you want. It's your game. So.
Well, just guidelines. So actually, Chad, that list you looked up is useless. It means nothing.
Yeah, I know.
Lordy. Okay. So in your guys' like homebrew games, we already know the answer for this for Serenity, but do you tend to like incorporate the undead as like a regular part of gameplay, or is that like an every once in a while thing?
Never.
I mean, I have what has grown out of a Curse of Strahd campaign that I'm running right now. So the undead were at one point a pretty huge part of it because, Barovia, it's chock full of walking corpses. And
there's some skeletons.
Yeah, there be skeletons and such. But, once everybody gets out of that area, then the undead just sort of like don't come up as much. And I think it really depends on how they're going to be used, because like, just to use an example, I'm not a huge fan of like zombie movies and TV shows overall as a genre, because I feel like the whole idea of walking army of corpses, hell bent on destroying everything because they're just mindless zombies. Okay, we've seen that all before. It then just turns into, how can you use this thing to make a point about something else? Like, The Walking Dead is a good example, because it's less about the zombies and more about this is the human condition in an apocalypse. You could replace the zombies with anything and it would still mean the same thing. This is what happens when humanity turns on humanity and is pushed to the brink of its own destruction. So using undead as a plot device to make something more would be basically what you'd be going for, instead of just, well, now you're going to have to fight this lich and his army of zombies and skeletons and flesh golems and have fun, kids.
That was my campaign.
And it's a perfectly valid way to do.
But liches, I think, are a little bit different because they're like a lot more like this like they're not the traditional.
Yeah, liches are a villain.
Same with vampires. They're not the traditional, and also vampires don't necessarily employ skeletons and zombies necessarily. Like they might be employing humans, like who worship them or whatever. Same with like liches and stuff like that. I generally actually don't like to use the undead for like what I've been using it for. I had to tie it in because Caleel made Baltaim's backstory. They got kidnapped by a bunch of like skeletons and zombies that were attacked, and I was like, okay, well, I have to make this make sense in some way.
Just two gods.
But I generally do like using like ghosts and stuff. And this is another reason, because there are a lot of undead creatures that are like low CR that can still mess shit up for like low level, even medium level parties, if you just don't save well.
Yeah, like one ghost gets into a party without someone that can do turn undead. Well, you saw what that did.
Yeah,
I mean,
like the possession and everything like that can like
exactly
TPK group. But yeah, what I do like them for is like if you're playing like for a bit, like I had like I've used like banshees before, and it mostly is about the story behind like how they became what they became, or like a ghost. Like the idea that a ghost is haunting something is because they've left some purpose unfulfilled. And it's like using that to create less of like an adversary, but more of something for the players to interact with and try to make right or help. And so I like using undead in that perspective, because like Chad said, like just the like a bunch of skeletons coming to attack you mindlessly is like, okay, that can, sure, you can make a combat around that, but
what are the skeletons a metaphor for?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
right.
You know, but yeah,
like, a bunch of skeletons. Undead, I can get that by playing Castlevania.
Undead in that way, where it's like more of like a game of investigation and understanding of like, why is this thing here? Like it shouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually that brings up something that I actually did do once, because you mentioned banshees, and I actually used something where it was like the first adventure I had when I was running a homebrew campaign a while back, and the idea was just having people investigate this house where some folks had gone missing. And what it was is I basically made a haunted house where all of the staff had been slaughtered by the woman that owned said house, because she was this like high noble born elf who was just at a place where she was just desperate to get married because that is what society demanded of her, tried to do something with some sort of love potion, failed miserably, and then decided, well, I have to burn it all down and destroy everything.
Everyone with me. Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah. Like she just completely snaps, goes and annihilates her entire staff. They all become ghosts that are haunting the place because they have unfinished business of the fact that the woman that murdered them is now a banshee who is still around because she was cursed.
Still paying that last paycheck too.
Yeah, it was the same with
gotta wait on the severance.
The druid in Dehana, right? Like I didn't have you fighting a whole bunch of skeletons and zombies. It was the story of like how did she get this way and what was the connection of her to this town and why she was doing what she was doing. And I find like that's a lot more interesting than like just like throwing a bunch of zombies and skeletons at something.
Yeah. It kind of goes back to the thing I was saying earlier is, like, okay, great, horde of zombies. Sure. Who cares about the horde of zombies? What I want to know is what is it that is putting them there? What is it that is making this a problem?
Why are the zombies?
Yeah.
What is their motivation?
What does it all mean?
Why brain in the jar? Why?
Why?
Oh, brain in the jar. I still hate you, brain in the jar.
But why? Examine that feeling.
Examine that brain.
Oh, lovely. So kind of related question. How can you incorporate like necromancy into your world building? Because I feel kind of like asking yourself how taboo necromancy is in your world is one of the first questions you ask, kind of when you're designing a whole world from whole cloth.
Well, I mean, I feel like that it is a question you have to ask as far as just like the certain types of necromancy. Like, is it going to be okay if someone just comes waltzing through town with their zombie friends that they just happen to have resurrected from the corpses of bandits that tried to accost them that one time? And is that going to raise eyebrows? Also, is that going to raise the ire of the local law enforcement? Will the constabulary become involved? Possibly.
What are the zoning laws for zombies in your town? Are they livestock?
You have to have a permit to have them, maybe?
Is it livestock who is not live?
Is it dead stock?
Is it dead stock?
I think the other thing around like necromancy, so like my world's very different and there's only one person really who's like kind of being told like if there's undead you got to deal with it, and that's Baltaim, because he's associated with the Raven Queen, and Raven Queen finds the undead are an affront to the natural cycle of life. What that means, well, I guess we'll find out. But I think it's interesting because I think the one thing that also makes necromancy kind of, and it's less necromancy itself, it's more just like raising, like creating undead, and like using it. And I think the reasoning is, and it's very similar to like bringing forth a demon or something like that, is I believe with the spell, if you lose concentration, you can actually lose your control over them, which then means they're gonna go and like eat people and attack people and potentially attack you. And I think that that's the main worry about most necromancy in terms of like taboos, because like when you talk about like things like chill touch or ray of enfeeblement or something like that, people don't even really associate like those are necromantic spells, but people don't even really think of it in that way. But when you say I'm gonna raise these two skeletons here, I think it's more around the association of, are you going to be able to control those? And if you can't, what does that mean? And I think that that's where like the stigma comes in more so than just with the school itself. and that's just like naturally pervaded things. But I think that that's also like the interesting question, because does that same attitude like pervade your world if someone summons an elemental, or if someone summons a fey spirit? And because sure, fey spirits are not necessarily evil, but they're very chaotic and they can cause a lot of problems if you lose control of them. So it's like I think it's a very interesting sort of understanding of, rather than it being necromancy, it more being summoning something not of this world and not really having a contingency plan if things go to shit. And then they're running amok, and and of course a lot of things of this world don't necessarily know how to deal with those. We don't have the tools to handle those kinds of creatures. So I think that's more like, at least in my world, that's the more interesting aspect. It's less like, oh, necromancy bad, and more, are you sure you understand the contract that you're making here when you perform the spell?
To cause problems, maybe. Awesome. So are sort of related to the first question, are the undead necessarily always evil? Because you do have some types that are intelligent.
I would say not necessarily, especially considering the fact that as of Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, you can be half a vampire as an actual player character. And that alone means, no, the undead can't always be evil, because if you're opening that up to say that a player can inhabit a character who is, essentially partially undead, then nothing is going to be black and white with that anymore. Also, there is, something
the reborn
about
too, like reborn, where you like also are part undead, like you.
You're partially undead because of like some sort of kind of endless reincarnation cycle.
Yeah.
But that's another good example too. Like with those things, and also the fact that just because something is a vampire or something is a lich or what have you, doesn't necessarily mean that they are the big bad of the entire campaign. It just means that they are whatever that class of thing is. They are that stat block in a monster manual, but beyond that, what are they? So I don't think they're not always going to be evil, because it's too limiting to say, yes, it's always evil. Like I remember in a home game, you're familiar with this, where we met a beholder who, instead of being this horrible, evil, crazy monster, was a delightful subterranean gardener and just such a sweet creature.
Beholder, my beloved. What was his name? Raymond?
Randall.
Randall.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I don't think undead. I mean, I think mindless undead are evil because they're a
ravening horde.
Well, yeah, they're guided by their urges, and their only urge is either to destroy or to feed, right? I think like when it comes to, like, for instance, like Lich, I think their like normal alignment is like neutral evil, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. But I think like that's also given to them because, like, again, perspective wise, like most people think, well, okay, this person wanted immortality, traded their soul for it, also had to do some pretty awful things in order to create a phylactery and then make themselves this way. But at the same time, I don't think like, I think there's like, we often talk about like, does one evil act make you just blanket you with the like the evil moniker? Because I think like probably all of us in life have done things like morally where we were like, I probably shouldn't have done this. But does that make you an evil person just in general? I don't think so. And so I think like that's the other cool thing about any kind of monster. And that's the cool thing about like D&D and playing with your characters is, or playing with your players is like giving them opportunities to interact with these creatures in ways that they wouldn't normally expect. Like there was that ghost in the mansion that they went into that was literally just fooling around with them and ended up joking with them and then leaving them alone and just was like, get out of my library. I don't want you here anymore. But wasn't actively like really trying to harm them. You know, and I think like you can play with that. You know, you can play. I mean, even in your game when we played, like the Lich was like it was trying to decide like who's the lesser of all the evils, and he had some valid points as to like why he was doing what he was doing. You know, like there was some awful stuff that like the humans had done, and it was like, okay, well, yeah, I can't necessarily just blanket you with like you're just a horrible, terrible person. I mean, a lot of the stuff that he did was terrible, but yeah, I think I think that those nuances is what makes like a story or any kind of like villain or character interesting, is because the players have to weigh, honestly, like, is this the greatest, like, is this a worthwhile use of my time? Is this really the greatest evil? Are they the thing that I really have to worry about most in this world? Or are they just kind of not a great person, but honestly, they're over here doing their own thing and they're not going to bother anyone. So I, you know, to go and waste my time killing them when like this dragon over here is like devouring women and children and breathing fire all over the nation. I probably
a more immediate issue.
Yeah. This is higher on the to-do list.
A bit higher. Yeah, I will say that Lich was evil, but he was also a politician, so they're all evil.
No, he was. He was evil. I know that. But I don't think the king was that great a person either. And the chick was a fucking bitch. I hated her.
She was a bitch, but she was the best of them.
Yeah, she was.
Lordy. That was a fun campaign. Anyway, although if you guys want to know some cool Lich lore, I like Liches a lot. There's actually, I'm not sure what this is not in 5e, but it's in one of the compendiums of whatevers. But there's a special kind of Lich called a Baelnorn, which is specifically an elvish Lich, which is created to guard a lineage. So it's a not evil Lich, essentially. I thought that's some really cool little Lich lore for all of you.
Dope.
So which actually brings us pretty fluidly into our next question, which is, of all the undead creatures, what's your favorite? Mine's a Lich.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
I think I have to go with I don't know. For me, it's kind of a tie actually with Lich or Vampire, because there's a lot that you can do with either one, and there's a lot of narrative versatility in there. You know, like with a Lich, it turns into why are they what they are? What do they want out of being what they are? And are they the type of creature that is going to burn the world down to get what they want, or is it something harmless or what have you? And then with the vampires, it's basically the same thing. How did they become whatever they became? And is that going to cause any kind of problem? But there's a lot when you put those things on the table, and then you've got a whole thing you've got to build up to make it make sense for why they're there. It's like the reason the whole Ravenloft setting was made to exist in the first place is because people were playing D&D, and you round the corner and there's a vampire, and they're like, that makes no sense. Why is the vampire there? And then they wrote out the entirety of Ravenloft to give one vampire
land, bitch.
Yeah.
You're in that country.
It's vampires are us. Welcome. But they wrote out the whole thing, just make sure it made sense. And that's the thing, is like you have to, it gives you a challenge of build the narrative to make it make sense for why is this thing here and what are you supposed to do about it.
In Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, I have not been able to use it yet, and you have to have the right thing for it. But there is a creature, high CR, called a Nightwalker, and it is literally the embodiment of the creature from the end of Princess Mononoke. When the forest spirit kind of becomes that giant thing. It's got the same sense of feel. Basically, like it spreads this aura of destruction every step it takes, and basically like just sucks the life from everything around it. And it's just basically anti-life and negative energy in a huge creature, which is what that forest spirit was after they cut off the head. It was just this negative being that was encompassing everything. And it actually kind of looks like the art that they've used kind of makes it does look actually like that spirit. And I want to use it so bad, but that's
like really cool.
Yeah, it's really, really super interesting. I don't know. Like, you would really need a good reason to use it. But I would love that, because I love Princess Mononoke, and I love the understanding of that, and like having that come out of maybe something positive, like what happened in Princess Mononoke, would be like a really cool transition for the player characters to potentially have to deal with. And yeah, that's one of my, like, ever since I saw that, that's like become like my favorite undead creature that I've never been able to use and can't find a good reason for, but I always look at it and I'm like, I like you so much.
Someday.
Yeah.
Maybe the next one shot we do.
Maybe,
it can be like a high level one. We'll
It'd have to
a
be
Nightwalker. Yeah, that'd be crazy. Next Halloween, not this Halloween. What was I just gonna say? I've forgotten. Oh yeah, so we've like time for one more question.
Sure.
So do you guys think that you like need a source of holy magic to fight the undead, or can you just get by with a bunch of fire? Like,
I mean, it just sort of depends on what specific undead thing you're fighting. If you're fighting a vampire, then kind of, yeah, because there's certain shit that you have to be able to lock down that you can only do with running water or radiant energy and sunlight and such. So in that case, yeah, maybe. Otherwise, not so much. It just turns into what is the thing that you're trying to put back in the ground and how you need to go about doing it.
And I don't think so. I mean, I think obviously like people associate the two things, and it obviously makes it easier because there are a lot of like undead things that are like vulnerable, or their healing doesn't happen if they are hit with radiant energy and stuff like that. But I don't think like you absolutely need it. If you don't have it, it might make the fight a little bit longer or a little bit tougher, but it's not like a necessity. But I think it adds like an interesting perspective for characters. Like, even if you're playing like, I don't know, like a party of like no divine and just like fighter, you know, a druid, a bard, and a sorcerer or something like that, and none of them have anything divine, I think it gives them a cool opportunity to like use their like media knowledge to like go grab bottles of holy water and like throw it in the fight, just to like add that like radiant burn so that they don't get a chance to heal back for that turn and stuff like that. I think it adds like actually like cool mechanics that you could use to make for fun stuff. Like breaking out a window to cause sunlight to come in and like burn the vampire and stuff like that.
Yeah. Everything's an opportunity for cool mechanics. Anyway, and that is our time for tonight. Thank you, Chad, for being on. Thank you, Serenity, for filling in. Hopefully we'll be able to get Caleel back on soon so we can actually talk about all the cool stuff that happened to him.
He has so many questions to answer.
So many questions to answer. All of them are mine.
Sure, his power went out. A likely story. You dodged the truth this time, you mountebank.
Can't escape it. Anyways, thank you everyone who is watching currently, and everyone who will watch over the coming week. There are usually a few of you. Thank you for tuning in, and make sure to tune in on Friday. We got some more pretty pivotal stuff. As Serenity mentioned, this is kind of a fulcrum point in the storyline, so everything the characters do is super super important. No pressure. Awesome. Check out, please, I have a whole list of stuff that you should definitely check out our store. We have cool t-shirts and mugs and cool shit, and you should definitely go look. Check out our Twitter. Are we still doing art crawl? Is that done?
Yes.
Now?
No,
it's still happening
for the very very long and foreseeable future, because there's a lot of art to get through.
Yeah, there's a lot of art, and a lot of it's really cool, so you should like genuinely please check it out. These are amazingly talented artists who have drawn us art for our little stream, and we're so grateful to them, and we want everyone to see what they've done. Look at what you've done in a good way. Please check out our Discord. We post memes, and stuff, and you can come talk to us and ask questions and things. Check out our Patreon. We've got behind the scenes stuff, and we've got cosplay photos, and you can ask questions on there too, and I'll have to ask them on stream. Please take advantage of that. So I have to write list questions, make my job easier, and satisfy your curiosity. Well, I'm forgetting. Check out our YouTube. We have the whole backlog of all of our episodes for all of our shows there. Check out our sound YouTube. What's that called?
Our Anchor
podcast.
Our podcast. Thank you, Chad.
The thing I work so hard on.
This is Chad's baby.
Or Sound YouTube. Job. I love that. That's now what podcast is going to be called from now on. Sound YouTube.
You know, it's like a video, but it's just sound.
Yeah, I love it.
Completely foreign to us streaming.
It's like a TV show, but you shut off the picture.
Yeah. I mean, nice old fashioned radio play. And we checked that out. Chad was very hard on it, and it's great. And I believe that's it. Thank you to Sunbird and Lady Meows, who have done a great job on our music and our title card. We love them, and it's served us well for this past 58 episodes of this show. I had to check it real quick. Anyway, good night. I've rambled on long enough. I'm sure you all need to eat or go to bed or get up. It depends on where you are. Please have a great evening, and thank you for tuning in. Good night.